Are you ready to learn the truth about how Northerners survived the long darkness without freezing in their sleep? We are used to seeing Vikings in battle, but their true strength was revealed at night, when the cold tested every detail of their daily lives. This is not a legend, but a chain of simple solutions, proven reliable in a harsh climate. What matters here is not beautiful gestures, but precise order of actions and discipline of warmth. Every board, every skin, and every spark had its place and purpose. Watch the video to the end, and you will learn how an ordinary house was transformed into a living system for conserving heat and energy during the polar night. Are you ready for the shocking truth? The Vikings' most reliable secret was hidden not in their weapons, but in the layout of their homes. The longhouse functioned as a heat engine, where every space contributed to the overall warmth. The narrow body, low ceiling, and thick walls kept the warm air closer to the people. The fewer voids, the less chance for drafts and temperature loss. The central hearth was positioned so that it heated the longitudinal axis of the house. Benches and sleeping platforms were raised above the earthen floor, where a cold layer of air accumulated. This simple elevation reduced body heat loss and protected against dampness. Wooden flooring took the strain off the joints and reduced the risk of colds. At night, the heat from the hearth rose to the beams and slowly circulated along the roof. The walls were made of wood or erected on a frame with thick plaster and a layer of turf. The turf served as a reliable layer that retained heat and muffled the wind. Extra openings were avoided, leaving small windows for the day and closing them at night with shutters. Joint to joint, gap to gap, and the house stopped breathing cold. At night, only the crackling of coals could be heard. Along the long walls were sleeping places, which also served as seats for daytime activities. This dual functionality saved space and kept the heated air where people slept. Dry bundles of straw and spare furs were stored under the floorboards to quickly increase the layer of insulation. Each place had a familiar set of things, and the hand did not wander in the dark. Order here was not a decoration, but a way not to lose heat. Wooden partitions and heavy curtains divided the space into warmer compartments. At night, they were lowered to preserve the personal warmth of each sleeping niche. The fabric blocked the movement of air and allowed for a smaller fire. Thus, the house became a series of small, warm pockets. I would be very interested to hear your opinion on which details of this arrangement you find most important. Please write your comments, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. What if everything you've been taught about fire has long since lost its meaning? For the Vikings, fire was not just a flame or a symbol of comfort. It was a living being that required attention, routine, and rhythm. The hearth in a longhouse did not burn the same day and night. Its character changed like a person's breath. In the evening, when the warriors returned from work or hunting, the hearth was lit to full power. The flames rose to the beams, warming the walls and drying clothes. But closer to midnight, when the heat had already filled the house, the flames were extinguished to a steady smolder. The coals were leveled and covered with a layer of ash, like a blanket, to retain the heat until dawn. It was the quiet energy of the night, without light, without noise, but with a constant presence. It breathed with the house. The stones around the hearth acted as invisible guardians of heat. They were not overheated until red hot. That was considered wasteful. The right heat had to be soft even, and not destructive to the air. The stones slowly absorbed heat during the evening and gave it off throughout the night, maintaining an even temperature in the longhouse. The Vikings knew that it was not the strength of the flame that warmed, but its balance. Too strong a fire dried the air, burned the wood, and left morning fatigue. Too weak a fire could not cope with the humidity, and the walls began to draw cold. Finding the middle ground was not a matter of instinct, but of knowledge passed down through generations. The nightly routine began with checking the dampers, curtains, and coals. Every evening, this was repeated with ritual precision. The curtain over the sleeping area was lowered, leaving only a narrow slit for breathing. The coals were leveled with a poker so that there were no mounds where an extra tongue of flame could flare up. A wooden shield was placed at the entrance to protect against drafts, so that a sudden gust of wind would not blow away the heat accumulated during the day. Even a crack in the floor could be an enemy, allowing the cold to seep through to the feet of those sleeping. These actions were not futile. They were part of the order in which the house lived, like a ship on the night sea, quiet but under control. The selection of fuel was a science, not a matter of chance. Short, dry logs were used in the evening to quickly heat the air and allow the flames to blaze. Thick logs were left for the night. They smoldered slowly and evenly, creating a foundation for stable coals. Birch bark served as a natural fire accelerant, while pine needles and bark provided a soft lining that retained heat. Firewood was not stored haphazardly, but strictly. Dry bundles were kept on the attic beams, closer to warm air, where there was less dampness. Large logs were kept against the wall, protected from the wind. During the winter months, each piece of wood was checked by ear. If the log rang when struck, it was ready for use. A mistake meant not just inconvenience, but a sleepless, damp night for the whole family. Keeping the coals going united everyone. In every house, there was a person who knew the breath of fire, by sound, by smell, by the subtle change in the air. He could feel when the flame was getting too hot, when it was time to turn the log, when to cover the damper. This person did not talk much. He listened. The silence of the night taught attentiveness that no scroll could teach. The Vikings believed that the ability to keep the fire calm was akin to the ability to control oneself. After all, the hearth reflected the soul of the house. If everything was in order inside, then the coals would smolder evenly. This art was not romanticism. It was a precise science of survival. Every sound, every spark, even the crackling of resin mattered. These rhythms gave rise to the feeling that the night was not an enemy, but an ally. There was no need to seek warmth. It had to be retained. And so the question remains, which of these techniques was the main secret to retaining heat? And are you ready to open the next chapter? About sleeping platforms and how they turned sleep into a continuation of protection from the cold? I will reveal the most closely guarded secret of Northerners' domestic warmth. The main idea was to create a small chamber around the body with a predictable temperature. The platform raised a person above the cold floor. The fur created an air gap, and the canopy fixed the volume. This created an area where heat did not escape or disperse throughout the empty house. The small volume was heated by the body and coals. The base for sleeping was made of boards with small gaps. On top was straw or hay in a cover that could be easily shaken out and dried. A woolen cloth was spread on the soft layer, and fur was placed on top. The fur was oriented with the pile toward the body so that air was trapped in the cavity. This pie kept the heat evenly distributed. The canopy over the headboard was not a decoration. Thick linen or woolen fabric formed a niche where the wind did not blow. It was enough to leave a gap at the feet so that the air was renewed slowly and did not bring cold. The curtain eliminated temperature differences and allowed the body to rest without shivering. Inside, the darkness was softer than outside. The fur was selected according to the task. Thick and heavy fur was used for the outer layer, while light fur was placed closer to the body so as not to overload breathing. If the night promised to be very cold, the fur was folded in half at the edges to reinforce the edge. A cushion was left at the head of the bed to cover any gaps. Each skin was used where it was needed. It was easier to stay warm in pairs or groups. People lay close together, aligning their bodies and keeping the overall volume under the canopy. This was not a coincidence or romanticism, but a calculation of soft air currents. Which of these practices do you find most effective and why? Please like if you would like to explore the topic of Viking household secrets in more depth. Guess what happened next? The heat in a longhouse is retained not only from the inside, but also from the outside. The turf roof and thick walls dampened the gusts of wind, which steal heat faster than any nighttime chill. The heavier the roof, the more resistant it is to winter gusts. The outer shell acted as a shield. The slightly sloping roof allowed the snow to settle in a thick blanket. In winter, this layer was not removed. It served as additional insulation. The snow muffled the sound of the wind and covered the smallest cracks. Under the roof, the air circulated slowly and gave off heat back down. The beams were not overheated so that the wood would not crack. The entrance was made low and covered with a vestibule. This vestibule broke the wind flow and kept the cold at the threshold. The inner door was held on heavy hinges and fit tightly into the opening. At night, the threshold was the first line of defense. Any crack here felt like a blow to the house. Cracks in the walls were sealed with moss and fibers mixed with clay. The layers were laid with the palm of the hand, leveling the surface without cracks. If the house was located by the sea, the salty air dried the materials faster, and the sealant had to be renewed more often. A clean surface repelled moisture better. Dampness was the main enemy of a warm sleep. All exterior elements were checked for sound on windy nights. If there was a whistle somewhere, it meant that part of the sleep was escaping. It was corrected immediately, without delay. In the next chapter, you will learn how people adjusted their sleep patterns to the long darkness, and why 2 nights in one were considered the norm. Do you agree with this approach to winter? Long darkness disrupts the usual clock and resets the body. In northern lands, it was convenient to sleep in 2 phases, dividing the night into 2 peaceful segments. Between them, there was a short time for chores, quiet conversations, and checking the coals. This routine relieved the anxiety of waiting for the cold dawn. The house lived at its own pace. The break between sleep was used for small household tasks. Some repaired belts, some prepared tools for the morning, and some did quiet work by the warm coals. At this time, a thick log was added so that the embers would reach every corner of the hearth. The silence allowed them to hear the house and understand where it was colder than usual. The second phase of sleep was deeper and warmer. By this time, the coals had stabilized, and the temperature inside the canopy had evened out. The difference between the first and second sleep was felt by the body as a change of season. People got used to waking up without sudden movements and went back to the warmth. The rhythm was smooth and confident. Daylight is rare in winter, but it is important. During the day, bedding was aired in a dry place to prevent moisture from accumulating. Fur was shaken and combed to restore its fluffiness and volume. A dry bed warms better than any flame. Taking care of belongings saved fuel. During the long darkness, it was important not to confuse laziness with rest. Sleep discipline and simple repetitive actions gave stability to each day. This is how weeks were spent without losing strength and vigor. The house helped the body, and the body thanked the house with work. What I'm about to show you has long been hidden behind ordinary habits. Smoke in a longhouse was not only a side effect, but also part of heat management. Warm smoke lingered under the roof and created a soft layer. It reduced the movement of cold air and kept a stable layer of heat below. It was important not to overdo it and to keep the air clean. The air intake was made low and the outlet higher, so that the draft was even. At night, the dampers were closed so that the coals did not suffocate, but also did not flare up. Too strong a draft pulled heat out of the house and consumed fuel reserves. A weak draft led to a difficult morning and damp walls. The balance was felt by the eyes and skin. Dry fuel produced calm smoke and predictable coals. Wet logs smoked, cooled the flame, and took away the night's silence. Firewood was monitored all year round, not just in winter. When the dark season came, there was enough supply without any worries. Everything worked like a well-oiled machine. The light at night was soft and low. Small lamps fueled by animal fat were placed so that they did not disrupt the flow of warm air. The flame was not meant to wander, it was meant to serve. Any extra fire was considered a waste. In the darkness, it was not brightness that was valued, but reliability. The whole house listened to the wind in the pipes and crevices. If the howling intensified, they changed the position of the dampers and curtains. The most sensitive were those who woke up between dreams. They knew how to turn the poker and where to press the edge of the canopy. Which of these adjustment techniques do you think is the most important? In the next chapter, we will move on to sleepwear and layers. Are you ready for this basic question? Sleepwear followed a simple rule of layers. The bottom layer wicked away moisture, the middle layer trapped air, and the top layer protected against drafts. Too much clothing was a hindrance. Too little caused the body to lose excess heat. The balance was achieved through experience, not fancy words. The night quickly revealed any mistakes. Wool was at the heart of the system. It trapped air and worked even in wet weather. Fur was placed on top of it, creating a stable thermal gap. If the temperature dropped below normal, an additional woolen cloak was added. Heavy outerwear did not weigh you down if it lay loosely. The head and neck were protected separately. Heat loss through an open crown was noticeable in a longhouse. A simple woolen hat and collar provided more protection than an extra jacket on the chest. The thin fabric under the chin was tightened so as not to interfere with breathing. There were no knots that would press down during sleep. Hands and feet were kept warm with suitable coverings. Thick wool socks kept feet from getting cold on the wooden floor. Hands were covered with light gloves if the night was particularly harsh. These details improved the overall balance and ensured a peaceful sleep. Nothing was trivial here. In the morning, clothes were aired out to remove nighttime moisture. They were dried in a warm place away from open flames. Over-dried wool loses volume and does not retain air as well. Caring for the material extended its service life and preserved warmth at the same fuel cost. For Northerners, warmth came not only from the coals in the hearth, but also from within, from the very discipline of life. In the evening, when the wind died down and the snow rustled against the walls, a dim light was lit in the house, and they sat down to eat. A thick, viscous, rich meal that not only satisfied their hunger but also kept them warm. A stew of grains, fish, or meat simmered in a cauldron until dusk, thickening and filling the air with a rich aroma. Hot broth, rich soup, a slice of bread with melted fat. All this was not just food, but fuel for the night. It was eaten slowly, in silence, so that the body had time to absorb and distribute the energy. Here, taste always went hand in hand with calculation. Each spoonful was a measure. Each pause was part of the balance. Excess was considered wasteful, because even satiety had to be reasonable. Drinking was not limited to cold water. Warm herbal infusions, pine needle decoctions, berries, sometimes with the addition of fat or flour, served as a prolonged source of heat. Such drinks did not burn, but gently warmed, slowly spreading heat from the chest to the hands and feet. They were poured in small portions, not to satisfy hunger, but to keep the internal fire steady, without fluctuations. Before bedtime, a mug of hot infusion became the last ritual of the day, connecting the body and tranquility. The warmth that came inside did not go away quickly. It moved like breath, slowly and confidently, giving the body the strength to live through the night without unnecessary tension. Before going to bed, people avoided fuss and loud activities. The night did not tolerate haste. After the last meal, the house gradually slowed down. The shutters were closed. The fire was extinguished to embers, and the skins at the doors were checked. Even conversations became quieter and footsteps softer. All this was necessary so that the family's breathing would fall into the general rhythm of the house. Any unnecessary movement disturbed this balance. Late work, noise, or arguments could destroy the body's readiness for rest. Calmness was not a luxury, but a way to stay warm. Silence warmed as well as a blanket because it allowed the blood to flow smoothly, the breath to remain steady, and the mind to calm down. Supplies were always stored so that there was no need to go out into the wind. Everything necessary, firewood, crackers, oil, bellows, was kept close at hand, within arm's reach of the bed. This saved energy and time between sleep. Anyone who went out at night to look for something in the cold lost more than they found. Therefore, order was not a whim, but a system of protection. The cold does not forgive disorder. It looks for gaps in carelessness, delays in movement, unnecessary gestures. Nighttime discipline consisted not only of silence, but also of precision. Everything had to be in its place, every item within reach. The morning brought warmth back to those who lived in rhythm. If the evening was right, without fuss, without excess, the body woke up calmly, Vigor came not in a rush, but in waves, light stretching, arm movements, breathing through the nose, slow rising. Blood flowed back to the fingers, and warmth returned without effort. The hearth flared up from the first coal, and the house responded as if it remembered how to keep the heat. The night fulfilled its task. It preserved what had been accumulated and passed the baton to the day. The cycle closed without loss. Warmth, order, and attention flowed into each other like a river that never loses its course. And the Northerner knew, those who know how to preserve warmth know how to preserve life. A winter hike required a special routine. They were taken to the shore by boat, and the sailcloth was stretched out like a canopy. The ground was covered with spruce branches and dry grass to raise the body above the cold earth. Sleeping places were set up quickly and uniformly so that no one would fall out of the common thermal rhythm. Gusts of wind were extinguished with shields and cloths. Fire on the march was strict and economical. A small hearth made of stones was placed on the leeward side. The smoke was not to return to the camp. The coals were prepared in advance so as not to have to stoke the fire all night. The watch shifts were clear and calm. Furs were folded into a common bundle and distributed in layers. Everyone knew their own set and returned it to its proper place in the morning. On the road, they valued the repeatability of movements. No improvisations that would result in cold. Backpacks were covered with thick fabric to protect them from frost. Sleep on the ship was brief and focused. People lay below the gunwale, where the wind was weaker. Raincoats and furs were arranged so that the seams did not let air through. Any gap became a problem on the waves. Unnecessary words were replaced by precise gestures. If there was a choice, the camp was set up near natural shelter. A rock or boulder broke the wind better than any fabric. Snow walls were built so that they would not collapse during the night. Nature helped if you listened to it. It was a partnership, not a struggle. For Northerners, night was a time for reflection and testing their inner balance. When the day was reduced to a few hours and the wind howled in the shutters, the house became a universe enclosed within four walls. Here, every object had meaning. The bench, the poker, the fur rug at the entrance, even the crack in the log. The hearth was the center of this circle. Not just a source of heat, but a place where breath, memory, and prayer came together. The evening gestures around the coals, adjusting the logs, turning the cauldron, shaking off the ashes, were not everyday movements, but a ritual that brought thoughts back into order. When the fire died down to a red glow, the soul also slowed down, became steady, ready for the night. Faith did not distract. It evened out the breath, gave meaning to the simplest action. The silence inside was a response to the darkness outside. The symbols carved into wood and embroidered into fabric served not as decoration, but as anchors for attention. The patterns on the beams, walls, and chests reminded us that even in the dark, the world does not lose its shape. Each ornament, a twisted coil, a cross, a circle, a snake, signified movement, return, protection. They connected people with their ancestors and with the rhythm that repeats itself from century to century. When the light fades and the world becomes quiet, this rhythm becomes salvation. It keeps the mind from wandering into fear and keeps the body warm. Confidence reduces trembling more than an extra layer of clothing. Amulets were hung at the head of the bed, above the hearth, at the threshold, and on the beam above the door. Each had its own place and function, protecting breathing, sleep, food, and the entrance. They did not ward off evil, but gathered attention, forcing thoughts to stay within the circle of the home. When a person is focused, fear disappears along with unnecessary noise. Thoughts stop racing, breathing evens out, and the body rests more deeply. Even a short sleep brings strength. Inner peace becomes a better heater than fur or fire. The house responded to respect with care. If you sew up a crack in time, the draft will not return. If you dry the furs and repair the floor, the warmth will last longer. Everything that is given attention returns with reliability. In the long darkness, there are no trifles. A crack in the wall, undried clothes, uncleaned ashes. All these are small betrayals of warmth. Those who repair live longer. And every morning, when the first rays of the sun touch the windows, the reward is a clear head and a steady hand. The polar night was not an enemy to northerners. It was a test of patience, precision, and repetition. In this slow darkness, everything happened slowly but surely. Each day, similar to the one before, gave rise to the confidence that life depends not on light, but on order. The repetition of tasks, prayers, and movements became a form of survival. In this calmness, strength was born. Not military strength, but domestic, quiet, yet unbreakable strength. And when dawn finally returned, even weak and dim, it confirmed the main thing. Order is stronger than cold, and attention is the best light in the darkness. What do you think about the Vikings' winter sleep and their nighttime warmth discipline? Which detail did you find most important, and why? Write your opinion and suggest topics for future issues about northern life and crafts. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new analyses of how simple solutions helped people survive the harshest times.